Brent. We're back for episode 19 of the Pursuing the Perfect Pint podcast. So, Brent, we're nearly 21 years old, or 21 episodes old. So, we're getting close to that milestone.
Yeah. At 19, you're legal in some parts of the world, like Canada,
Well,
you
this is
can
true.
consume when you're 19. So we're growing up
We're
gradually.
growing up. And I think this has been another interesting week, Brent, I think the title there of Exploring Beer's Affordability Crisis. I think there's also lots going on in the market that are going to add to that affordability crisis going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess what people will see, since we were in Lisbon, we took the opportunity to catch up with a lot of people. This one's particularly interesting when we get to the discussion with Stefania, because she comes with a totally different perspective, but we'll get to that. On the market side, yeah, I think here today in middle of April, where the news is entirely dominated by events in the Middle East and particularly Iran. So we have a peace deal, maybe we don't have a peace deal. Crude prices are going up and down around 100 euros a barrel. That's an inflation risk, and we don't really need that when we talk about beer affordability. The fact that
Yeah.
energy markets are up, fuel will be up, natural gas prices are up, of course, so cost at maltings and in breweries will have a potential impact. So not a very good time, never a good time, but I think the markets are entirely focused on it. The grain markets, when we talk about malt, that's actually a nothing story at the moment. We're seeing prices for grain markets kind of flat to downward trending. So probably more on the basis that economic growth will stall if we have a prolonged
Yeah.
war in the Middle East. So it's not good news. It probably tells brewers that may listen to this, you don't have to worry about the price of malt going up. It's probably going to stay at a very, very competitive price because of these economic risks and the pressure from inflation and so on. So we're probably in that mode for a period of time. All eyes are pointed to the Middle East.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Brent. How will consumers respond given that all the events that are happening there? And I mean that I think leads us very nicely into the podcast this week. Was a conversation you had with CS Events while we were in Lisbon, talking about what it means for them as event coordinators and
Yeah,
beer.
I think it's good. Well, a little backstory. We'll let people listen to it in person. But Stefania and her team, including Katja, help us put on events like our Lisbon conference. They helped us in Rome. So just through a casual conversation with them to say, hey, we're the most beer centric event. You'll hear that. But I think it was just an opportunity to get a totally different perspective. So I think we'll let people listen to that interesting discussion, and we can catch up on a few points afterwards. Okay, we are live from Lisbon, and today we've got Stefania from CS Events
Hi,
working with us.
everyone. Hello.
So we have worked closely now for 2 RMI conferences
Exactly. This is our second experience together.
and we're prepared for Lisbon,
Yes.
and we had a successful event in Rome.
Rome.
So we're good. You're based in Rome, right?
We are based in Rome.
So we made the connection in Rome, and we've continued the connection. So
Correct.
it's been very good.
It's been lovely.
So your business is all about putting on events,
Exactly.
like the
That's
events.
our core business.
Yeah. And maybe we'll start with, we were talking in preparing for this, the RMI conference, in your experience, is the most beer-centric event that you have seen in your working of events around the world.
Definitely so far. In my 40 years of experience, this is the first event or the first clients, let's call it this way, with whom I had to deal with beer only focus.
Yeah.
So which was a very interesting experience on that point.
I thought, like, in preparing for Rome, I thought, Stefania, we say, well, listen, we need for this event, we need beer and more beer. And then I think you even thought at the time, this can't be the case. Is this really all about beer? And now you found out by being through it, and we've now applied that for Lisbon this week.
Lisbon as well.
So we're ready. So with all your help, very much appreciated. The event and all these things that we talked about in preparing for it, we were having a very interesting discussion because we are beer centric. It was very interesting. And let's build on that example that RMI puts on an event, and you have to go to venues and say, listen, people, I know you've got Prosecco and champagne and wine. But this group of RMI people, they want beer and lots of it, like we ran out at times in Rome. So
Exactly.
one thought that you mentioned, which really got me thinking, was you said like when you're planning events in a case where you wanted to substitute beer on the menu or in the package that's offered by venues and replace wine, for example, you said in many cases the venues don't want to substitute
No.
beer for wine because wine's cheaper. So,
Yes,
which
exactly.
surprised me to hear that at an event level, and there's lots of events go on in the world everywhere. It's probably one of the challenges that beer has is the beer has got expensive. I will talk about it this week in Lisbon that beer has got expensive, and you just mentioned it in passing that venues need to charge more for beer, and in fact, you're losing the battle versus wine, which is bad for
Exactly.
us in the beer world, right? That's
Very, very seldom they agree to replace the wine allowance that they included in the package and the drink package with beer. They always want to charge you separate for the beers, and we need to be very careful in ordering the quantities because very seldom they got enough quantities to supply a heavy beer drinker crowd like yours can be.
yeah,
So they need, and we have to commit to quantities, because if they buy beers, not necessarily they will get rid of those afterwards. So we have to commit, we have to order separate, we have to pay for that separate. So that's an entirely
yeah.
different perspective.
Like I think when people listen and hear that, and I will definitely use this as part of my a part of my explanation of why I think there's an affordability problem for beer is I don't think many people would understand that at big hotels and big conference venues that beer isn't say a traditional lower cost product. It's actually a premium product. And some people make decisions based on their
Correct.
budget. If you're putting on an event like we do, everyone's got a budget and you have
Yeah,
to. And so it's really, really interesting to think that beer has, in some sense, has priced itself out of the market to a certain degree. Now, we have forced the issue because we just come in and say, well, we're all about beer. So we're going to,
exactly.
and we always will be about beer. We're
Beer
actually going to
focused.
maybe we would like to add a bit of the whiskey story because we do like products that have malts for whiskey or malt for beer production. But so that's very very insightful. So thanks for that. The other thing we talked about is food pairings, and since you're based in Rome, you have probably the best vantage point. And what you said in preparing was if you're in Italy and you are out for lunch and you have a pizza, which is highly recommended, I would say. If you tried to order a glass of red wine with the pizza, you would get looked at strangely by the restaurant.
Exactly. And they will definitely say they are foreigners, they're not locals because we only would drink beer with a pizza.
Right. So that's something I think the industry could take as a
Exactly.
learning to say, number one, eat pizza.
Yes.
Number two, have a beer with pizza. Never, ever, ever have a
Or the
wine
glass of
with pizza.
wine.
The
Exactly.
Italians are
No
famous.
better.
They know better, and you should just learn. And if everyone in the world did that, I think we could actually see where beer would see a growth potential because it's
Exactly.
such a good. There's other foods, of course, that pairings work very well. But I wonder when you talk about food pairings, like when you do events, do you see much where people are like it's very easy to pair wine because everyone can say, oh, if I'm having a seafood, then I should have a white wine, or if you're having a red meat, then you would have a red wine. Do you see where beer is paired in the same way, or
No, no,
not even
no,
close?
no, not
Yeah,
even close. I mean, we have everyone wants to have beer in the cocktail reception. Everyone wants to have beer as one of the alternative drinks during dinner, but very, very seldom beer pairing. Although in Italy, I have to say, where we're based, there is growing beer places where you go for beer tasting, where they got only beer menus, but they're still very few of
yeah,
those. And I have to say, as you said before, we pair pizza with beer. There should be a wider choice of beers when you go for a
mm,
pizza. Maybe we should, expand that one because there should be some beers which are better with a certain type of pizza than others. So that could be,
yeah,
a market opening up.
yeah. And even when preparing for this week, we're going to go down to a very nice restaurant along the river, and even there, we're going to have an assortment of beers. And there was a small discussion around what food choices should we have because we are
Exactly.
such a beer centric. So I hope in some small way, RMI is leading the way. We are the world leader in beer centric events. We're very proud of that, but we're learning from you along the way as well. The food and beverage piece we covered, the beer as a pizza, in the world of events. Is there anything else? What have you, in your interactions with RMI, anything else that has surprised you a little bit when this RMI group came along and said we want to
The
do
quantity of beers you drink per head, that surprises us. The quantity of, you never, you know that beer drinkers drink loads, but I've never ever seen so much beer, rivers of beer being served. So that was surprising. And but you are a nice lot. So I mean, very nice people, very interesting people. So I haven't said, even if you drink a lot, never gone overboard, which is fantastic, which is a change.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to
Exactly.
the thirst of our group. First of all, they're a thirsty lot, as you say. But they are beer centric, and we were talking about because you're in the industry. I think, of course, maybe when you go home and on certain occasions, you will, of course, enjoy a wine or a cocktail or so on. But I think the industry, because they're in it and it's part of their livelihood, like they do want to drink beer. They enjoy it. That's why they're in the industry, and it makes sense to promote the products that you
Absolutely.
do. And maybe we have a bigger job, is how can we convince more people to profile beer in a better way. The affordability problem is there. You told us that problem in a different light, which was really interesting. And it's not going to be like RMI is not going to change because we're already beer centric. I guess the question is, how do you get other people to convert? Yeah, the education. We talk a lot about storytelling. Like people need to know more about what goes in. Like, take where you come from. There's a huge number of Italian farmers that are growing barley, and that barley ends up in a Peroni or in a Moretti and all the other and smaller craft breweries. But that story is vastly undertold, right?
Exactly.
And that's the sort of thing we gather people together. We will do that this week. That we want people to be a little more proudful in telling those stories and getting the word out, and maybe that'll eventually lead to somebody else will come to you for an event and say, have you ever done beer pairing? And then you can say, well, you should see these RMI events. Like, these people have got beer figured out in a big way.
Exactly. And what we discovered with the first conference we did together, there is more than Moretti and Peroni, which are all very good beers. But, there are different flavors, different tastes, different consistency, different types, which we never thought about here. I remember the espresso beer that you produced for the Rome event. So that was a great experience.
With our friends from Bourtmalt, they made because in Italy you should have an espresso, and that was really good. I think the whole beer element is obviously something we're quite focused on, and I think we will continue to do that. So you've seen a lot from us on beer. I guess the farmer story is there this week. In fact, I guess we could, by the time we record this, it'll be over, but we are going to this venue, and exactly to your point, working with the team from Heineken locally, what we could have done, because it was already in premise, the Heineken flagship, red star, green bottle, was already there. It was already at the venue. We could have just put in a couple more kegs in there. But what we decided to do, like we did and you touched on for Rome, is to actually get more of a local picture, because beer is quite local. Like, beer is very much enjoyed, and there's a certain story that comes with the beer. We're going to tell part of that story this week in Lisbon, and I hope people maybe experience something that they wouldn't if they didn't come and join us. And with your help, we've got through, and you've seen our networking events. Our model is 51% of the event is networking, and 49% is the insight. So people should learn something during the conference, but as much or more, they network with people, and that socializing is so important. So with help from you and your team, we very much appreciate all the effort you help us. And we've already thought about maybe some early thoughts for 2028, but you have to stay tuned for that. So
stay tuned.
So in the meantime, we're in Lisbon, and we're going to keep pursuing the perfect pint. Stay tuned. Thanks, Stefania.
Thank you, Brent.
It's going to be a great week. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Ciao.
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 That was really interesting, Brent. I think that just shows one can drink large quantities of beer but still do it in a responsible way.
Yeah, I think, and there was no coaching on this with Stefania, and I think, of course, she knows us pretty well. We've worked with them. We tried to tell her and the team that we're a very beer-centric event in advance. I don't, I don't think they totally believed us till we actually went through Rome and they got it very clearly. So, and now they've got it and they help us, be very beer-centric. But I thought it was really nice for her to say that our group does it in a very professional and
Yeah.
well-mannered way. So I guess yeah, we do enjoy the products of the malt supply chain, but we do it responsibly. And I guess that's good. That's good for someone to give us that positive feedback when we didn't really expect it. To be honest, I didn't really think of it that way, but it was good that you mentioned it.
I think the other thing for me, coming from the sort of beer side, we spend a lot of time on beer pairings and food and beer pairings and trying to get beer into that food occasion where wine dominates. And it was interesting to hear from an events person saying, nope, beer is pretty much non-existent in the food pairing occasions, but pizza, we should be learning from the Italians. Beer goes with pizza. So people are drinking wine with their pizza should be no, no, no.
Yeah, maybe it's the ultimate food pairing. But on the first point, Danielle, it just floored me when she said that because I come, maybe you might say I'm old school in that sense, but I would never ever have thought that beer would get pushed out of events because it was too costly. Like
Yeah.
beer's never been in that space that beer was the most expensive option if you're having a big event. And just think of how many thousands of events go on every week, every month. And if that's happening widely, you kind of wonder where we've lost the plot a little bit in terms of beer. I call it the affordability crisis. Maybe that's seems extreme, but in some ways I don't think it is because, I would never have thought beer was the most expensive option, that beer's always been affordable and we've really moved away from that. Of course, it's events and you're at events and it's no doubt premium beers and so on. But I don't think that takes away from the point that Stefania raised, totally unexpected to me, was that it's a privilege to put it on an event
Yeah.
because of its cost and where wine and prosecco and these things are less
Yeah.
costly, which just means I think beer's just got in a bad position and we need to fix it. So that's my one speech on the pulpit, I guess, would be there's a clear example of affordability crisis. And then the second one on pizza, I don't know if there's 100 million pizzas every day, but if every person that had a pizza had a beer of some form, could be non-alc, could be a
Yeah.
light beer, could be an IPA, it doesn't matter. But if you did that and you took the advice from someone from Italy that knows, if you have a pizza and you order wine with it, you will get looked at differently from the Italians because that's not normal.
Yeah.
So I guess,
Recognized as a tourist, I think she said.
yeah, well, in German we'd say Auslanders. So I guess we'd
Yeah.
say learn from the Italians. If you're going to have pizza, we would recommend it, and with it have a beer.
Have a beer. Yes.
It seems like it was just a natural food combination, and the more that we could do that, I think you mentioned it, Danielle, as we were talking about it. There's a lot of other options, of course, where beer has great food pairing options, and I think more work in that space would definitely help promote beer in
Definitely.
more occasions, and like we talked even for the Lisbon conference, we have tried and we'll certainly do it again, but having a non-alcohol option available at lunches and at the afternoon break and maybe at the end of the day, I think it's something that should just become commonplace. That we should just, at our event, we should have
100%.
a non-alcohol option. There's malt in it, so everyone should be supportive.
Yeah.
Definitely go with the alcohol-free non-alc option, which I think is good in a work business environment. So I think there's more we could do even from our event planning and more dealing with people like Stefania can help us. So yeah, maybe conference 2028 we'll definitely have to serve pizza and there'll be only one thing that goes with it.
Yes, definitely. And where are we looking forward to next, Brent, for the next episode?
I think we did like the Lisbon stories that we captured, they literally touched the four corners of the planet. So I think we're planning the next one. We're going to probably go back to Australia because we did a follow-up discussion there. So we've got some stories upcoming: Australia, South America, North America, and of course Europe. So we're trying to mix it up a little bit. So you could expect on the next one, we would probably go down under and talk to our Aussie mates.
Perfect. Looking forward to chatting next week. Cheers.
Cheers.